going on? Welcome back here to another edition of Intuitive Angling, and much appreciated everybody making a little time out of their day to check today's video out. We are going to be talking about the three different parts of spring. As far as we're right in it now, we're right in the month of April, and there's actually three mini seasons in the month of April that I want to go over to that might help you guys sort of have a better understanding of fish movements and where to look for them at. I think you guys will find it interesting. Real quick, guys, today is the final day. It's our last day of our Solar Bat, my Signature Series RB2 series sunglasses. If you buy a pair by today, you get them at 25% off. And also, if you have a purchases over $100, you get your name thrown in to get a grab bag full of sunglasses. So I'll put the Solar Bat link in the description. And finally, it looks like we're going to hit 100,000 subscribers probably sometime tomorrow. I just got two big boxes of stuff for Megabass. They sent for the giveaway for the 100,000 subscriber giveaway. Bridgeford's got a bunch of stuff, so if you want to have a chance to win that, just hit that subscribe button and help us get over the top there. Much appreciated. Okay, guys, let's talk a little bit about the seasons of the month of April. Now, for a lot of you guys may know this, some of you guys may not know anything about it, some of you guys may have some misunderstandings about it, but April is the month as far as there's more stuff going on in the month of April in the world of bass fishing than any time, because April is generally, most of the time, throughout, I'm going to guess 75% of the country, that most of the bass spawn sometime throughout the month of April to some extent. But actually, in the month of April, depending upon the weather patterns and the geographical location of the country you're in, the fish can actually be in three phases of the spawn at one time. They can be in the late pre-spawn, or not even late, they can be in the early pre-spawn, depending on how far north you are. So they can be in the pre-spawn, the spawn, and the post-spawn all at the same time in April. And it's not uncommon for a lake that you're fishing to have all three different stages going on. Say, for example, if your favorite typical man-made lake, I'll use Table Rock for example here. If you're fishing in the upper end of the lake where the water's a little bit more off-colored, it's going to be a little bit warmer, and that's going to push those fish to spawn a little bit quicker. If you're fishing down towards the lower end of the lake, it's going to be a little bit cooler, so those are going to be late. So, for example, if you go to your favorite lake, or if I go to Table Rock in the second week of April, if I go down by the lower end of the lake where it's deeper and clearer, the fish may be in the pre-spawn stage. And if I go up the river, or up in a little bit more off-colored water, or let's say mid-lake or something, they could be starting to spawn. And if I get into some of the dirtiest, most protected water that warms up quicker than anything on the lake, there could be some fish that spawned a couple weeks ago, and they may be garden fry and entering the post-spawn period. So how do you approach that? So a lot of it has to do with what you're wanting to target. One of the things that I found out about fishing in April is so many of our tournaments used to get won by bed fishing, and I never did. I wasn't a bed fisherman, so I would always look for the pre-spawn fish. So say, for example, if I hear guys catching them off beds, visually fishing for nesting fish, I'm looking for those areas like those channel swings and the staging areas for some of those fish that are, a little bit behind, and I'll start targeting that. So say, for example, if you're fishing, say, for example, you've got a cove that's got fish spawning in it, and you can see fish bedding in there. A lot of times, if you pull out to the main lake and get on the nearest steepest bank or some of the nearest points, there will be fish staging on those, getting ready to take their turn to move up into spawn. So say, for example, if I'm fishing Table Rock Lake and I go back in a cove and I can see them on the bed there, and I can throw a wacky rig or whatever and catch some fish, I can probably also go and get back out to the closest main lake point and drag a football head jig or wobble head, or maybe even fish a jerk bait and catch those pre-spawners. And at the same time, if there are fish bedding in one particular area, there's probably some fish that have already spawned that you can't even see. In general, what you're going to find, guys, is most of the bigger fish, they will spawn out of sight. A lot of the fish that you see nesting and bedding, they're smaller to average size fish, but a lot of the bigger fish will spawn earlier and deeper, which is good. By the way, when you're talking about spawning fish, guys, you really need to just leave them alone. If you guys see some bedding fish and fish actually on a nest spawning, just try to bypass them, man. Just let them do their thing, let them spawn. It's good conservation practice. But a lot of times if you go back into those spawning areas and say, for example, you go down the bank and you can see some fish on beds and you say, well, I'm not going to mess with those, I'm just going to back out a little bit and throw a shaky head or whatever, you may still be catching bedding fish that you just can't see. It's sort of unavoidable in that situation. Now, a lot of times, if you do have some fish that are bedding at the same time, you will have some fish that are already done spawning. And a lot of the times you'll move up there and you'll see some vacant beds, and a lot of times you'll see some bluegills around them, you know, bass around there trying to protect the fry from eating the eggs and all that type of stuff. That's all going on at the same time. A lot of this can happen really quick. If you get, say for example, you get the first full moon in April and you get say you got an unseasonably warm front that comes in where the temperatures are 5 to 10 degrees above normal, and maybe you haven't had much wind and there's been an extremely fast warm up on the water, guys, those fish can move in there and spawn and get out of there quicker than what you would ever believe. Let me give you an example. I was practicing for a tournament down at Table Rock about 20 years ago. It was an April tournament and it had been a little bit cool, but it was starting to warm up, and I had like 3 days to practice. And I kept going into this one particular cove that I knew a lot of fish moved up into in April, and I was just working down the bank, just fishing a variety of techniques, and there was no sign of beds whatsoever at all anywhere. And I fished all through there, and I caught a few fish, just, you know, like fan casting. I think at the time I was throwing a Texas rig or shaky head or something, and I was catching some fish just fan casting around, but there wasn't any beds at all in practice. I went back there in that same cove the first day of the tournament, and guys, I'm talking like a day later, there were beds stacked up one after the other. It's like they had came in there overnight and hundreds of bass started building nests. There was white spots everywhere. They actually fanned them off overnight and in there starting to pair up ready to spawn. So this stuff can happen really quick like that. So the main thing, guys, is just remember when the month of April rolls around, you have a choice of the 3 different, you know, sub-seasons within the month of April that you can target those fish. And like I said, if you don't want to mess with spawning fish, go to the lower end of the lake, look for cooler water. Usually the mid part of the lake is going to be right on schedule, and the upper end of the lake is going to be a little bit ahead of schedule. So anyway, I hope it gives you sort of a broad understanding, foundation of that. Obviously, there's nothing that's set in stone in fishing, guys. I've seen, say for example, down at Grand Lake in Oklahoma, I've seen the bass spawn, like the most of the bass in the lake spawn like the first week of May. Sometimes if you get abnormally cold spells in there. So it's all relative to the weather patterns within the month. But that's just overall what I found. So hope it helps you guys out. We'll see y'all.